I think it is. You can be addicted to a person, and there's something called a soul tie as well, that some people term it. And when you have a soul tie, when you're addicted to that person, you're going to think about the way they make you feel. And when you're trying to, and maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but when you're trying to exit that person, maybe you've realized, ooh, this is really unhealthy. When you're trying to detach from them, I suggest making a list of every single bad thing they did. Remember that time that they embarrassed you in front of all those people? Remember that time that they diminished you? Remember that time that you were around a bunch of people and they were ogling other women right in front of you, like rudely and disrespectfully? Remember that? So I suggest making a list of all those things. And I know people say, oh, make positive lists. Well, in this case, you need to make a negative list. And when you start thinking about them or thinking you miss whatever you got from that, pull out that list and start reading it. And I think you'll be okay.
I look at, if I were to like dig into the darkest realms of my mind as a man,
Mhm.
why would I give that up? I have three, four, five women who are literally paying for almost everything, right?
Mhm.
Like, I can say that, hey, I'm going to go visit Michelle. And then I can call up Claire. Hey, Claire, can you pay my Airbnb? Of course I can, Terrain. Oh, I'm short for a couple $100 on my flight. Joanne, can you? Of course I can, Terrain. Like, when I look at it from like a purely dark,
Mhm.
selfish, self-motivated
Yes.
view, it is so enticing, that type of behavior.
Yes.
And I wonder how much of it is that they become so drunk with this power that they have over these people that they don't want to give it up, and they just continue to find more and more victims, and then they insulate these people. Because if I'm the type of person that would do this, what happens eventually if I meet someone who is very well off and
Mhm.
I start to distance myself from this group? What would
Yeah.
happen to them?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, good question. And yeah, I think that the motivation for just that self-satisfaction, I guess, of the person perpetrator is runs so deep, and they get drunk with the power and the manipulation, and they get themselves, just like the victims are hooked on the person and what they make them feel like, the perpetrator is hooked on the power and the control and the manipulation that he can take out and do the little puppet strings anytime he wants to, and he knows that, or she knows that. And it's such a vicious cycle because everybody is selfish. They're getting what they want. The victim, I'll give a pass to, because a lot of times the victims don't know. They've never been, they don't know the signs. And that's why I wrote that book too. And that's why there's others out there that are seeking to educate. Because if you aren't on social media, if you're not online, maybe you're a little older person or just not interested in that, you're not going to know how to read the red flags. And they're going to be waving like crazy in front of you, but you're not going to recognize them. So somebody could be, and like you said, the motivation is diabolical. It really is. The evil intent of extracting not just money, but the person's, and I'll say soul, not spirit, because nobody can take that, but the person's soul. They're after just making that person believe that they can't live without this other person. And that's the deep diabolical part of it. Is is there. It's unsaid, but it exists below the surface.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine looking at someone and saying, hey, give me this, knowing that it's going to put the person that I'm asking in a difficult situation. And
Exactly.
right. And I look at my relationships in the past, because you touched on a good point where you like make a list. Many of us, not enough, unfortunately, but many of us make a list when it comes to dating, marriage, and so on. How many of those people make a list for their friends, right?
Good
And I
point. Yeah.
recently, and I recently did this, and I came across, I was like, wow, there's a few people who I'm friends with, and at this point in my life, Michelle, I have no idea why I'm friends with them or why I was friends with them. That realization is tough because it's like, what were you putting up with in the name of friendship just because you knew them for 5 years, 10 years? Because, and I gave this example to someone who I decided that we can't be friends in the way we normally were.
Mm-hmm.
And I said that if I were to meet you today, we wouldn't be friends. It's
Yeah.
just you met me at a time where I'm not the same person because we all grow. At that time, things were fine, right? But the problem is that you've become someone that is different than that person, and I become someone that's different than that person. But we no longer can continue this life, this journey as friends anymore. And the reason why I said that is because he turned out to be using people. So what he would do is he would try to get the women or even some of the male friends now
Mm-hmm.
to pay. So like anytime we would go out, he would say, "Hey, can you cover me?" to the men, right? It's like after a couple of times, you begin, okay, what's going on here? How come he's not spending his own money? And then when you hear him going on dates, it's like, okay, I go like to this cheap date and I try to get her to pay and stuff like that, right? So he's that type of person. And I told him, I was like, I can't respect that.
Yeah.
And I can't have that around me. And then I told him the reasons why. I was like, it's not personal. I don't dislike you as a person. I dislike what you're doing. And maybe that means I dislike you too. Looking back, right? But the
Good.
reason why I say that is because as I've grown older, users, abusers, and losers really bother me. And what do I mean by that? I am bothered when people will use someone intentionally to extract as much as they can and then dispose of them like they're waste. I don't like people who would knowingly abuse someone verbally, mentally, physically, emotionally. Emotionally never gets talked about. Physically, we all know.
Yeah.
And when I say losers, it's a person who does both, right? They don't have anything going for themselves and they will take advantage of people in any way they can because they know that they can't achieve anything without extracting from others.